You know, sometimes the most significant victories are born from what looks like a total, crushing defeat. Today, we're going to unpack the incredible story of how a huge legal loss for marriage equality in Australia actually handed advocates the perfect roadmap to win the whole fight.
It all kicks off with this number, 31. That's how many same-sex couples were legally married in Australia's capital back in late 2013. But just 5 days later, the nation's highest court stepped in and said, nope, declaring every single one of those marriages completely void.
I know, it sounds like a total contradiction, right? How on earth could a decision that just erased 31 marriages possibly be a good thing for the cause? Well, that is the fascinating paradox we're here to break down.
All right, let's dive right in. To really get what happened in the court case, we have to start with this really bold move made by the Australian Capital Territory, or the ACT. That's the region where the nation's capital, Canberra, is.
I mean, just look at how fast this all happened. In October 2013, the ACT passes its own marriage equality law. By December 7th, weddings are actually taking place. But then, by December 12th, a mere 5 days later, it's all over, just gone. A complete whirlwind of hope, and then bam, heartbreak.
And this wasn't just some abstract legal thing. We're talking about real people. The very first couple to get married under this new law were Stephen Dawson and Dennis Littlelow. Imagine that. They, along with 30 other couples, had this historic moment of recognition, only to have it snatched away.
So this brings us to the legal showdown. The national government, which was led by Prime Minister Tony Abbott at the time, immediately challenged the ACT in the High Court. And the court's decision was fast, it was unanimous, and on the surface, it looked absolutely devastating for supporters. So the whole case really boiled down to this direct clash of laws. The ACT was arguing that, hey, it could create its own separate status of same-sex marriage. But the national government's argument was, no way. They said their Federal Marriage Act was the one and only law for marriage in the entire country. And back then, that law defined marriage as being between a man and a woman.
And the opposition was coming from a few different places. Legally, it was the national government itself. Politically, the local opposition party there in the ACT also voted against it. And then on the social side of things, you had groups like the Australian Christian Lobby who were very vocal opponents, arguing that marriage had to remain exclusively between a man and a woman.
In the end, the High Court sided with the national government. It ruled that the ACT's law was inconsistent with the Federal Marriage Act. And because national law always overrides territory law, the ACT's legislation was basically declared void from the get-go. A clear, total defeat. Or was it?
Because, and this is the incredible part, hidden inside this massive defeat was this stunning silver lining. The court's ruling had, totally unintentionally, created a constitutional roadmap that showed advocates the exact path to victory.
And this is the perfect way to think about it. The High Court closed a small side door. That was the path of trying to pass laws in individual states and territories. But in that very same decision, it basically handed advocates the keys to the massive front gate, the federal parliament itself.
So, what were these keys? Well, first, the court explicitly confirmed that the federal parliament was the only one with the power to change the definition of marriage. Second, and this is huge, it clarified that a super complex constitutional referendum wasn't needed. All it would take was a simple vote in Parliament. And third, it created a single target. The fight wasn't scattered across different states anymore. Now it was focused squarely on the national government.
The whole legal idea came down to this one word: immutable. The court found that the constitutional meaning of marriage was not immutable. It wasn't frozen in time. It could actually evolve with society to include same-sex couples. This was a monumental, game-changing finding.
So what happened next? What were the long-term effects? Well, this ruling completely reshaped the entire campaign for equality. It transformed it from this fractured state-by-state effort into one unified national movement with one crystal-clear goal.
And it's really important to remember that even way back in 2013, the public was already on board. The polls from that time show a clear majority of Australians already supported marriage equality. So the court case didn't create the will for change. What it did was clarify the path to get it done.
This really gets to the heart of the strategic takeaway. By shutting down that scattered state and territory route, the High Court forced everyone onto the same page. All the energy, all the resources, all the political pressure could now be aimed at one single bullseye: the federal parliament in Canberra.
And you can see a direct line from that 2013 ruling straight to the final victory. The ruling gave them the legal certainty they needed. This led to years of focused national campaigning, which all culminated in that 2017 postal survey, where Australians voted overwhelmingly in favour. And just weeks after that, the federal parliament finally passed marriage equality into law.
And in a really wonderful final chapter, the story came full circle. After the national law was finally passed, the ACT government reached out to those original 31 couples. It offered them official marriage certificates, totally free of charge, as a gesture to recognize their painful but absolutely pivotal role in making history.
So in the end, a devastating short-term loss gave the movement the exact strategic clarity it needed for a historic long-term win. It really makes you think, doesn't it? What other moments in history that we look at as failures were actually the most important steps towards success?